The story begins with the introduction of the female lead, Mona, a girl born in Osaka who moved to Tokyo a year ago. She is the kind of girl who captivates everyone effortlessly with her beauty. Everyone is stunned by her looks, and she proudly declares herself to be the whole package. To her, high school is merely a game where she plays to win. Mona reveals that no one can resist her charms, except for one boy. Determined to change that, she greets him with a confident smile. The boy's name is Kuroiwa Madaka, the protagonist, who transferred to the school 2 weeks ago. With a scowl, Madaka greets her back, visibly annoyed. Mona feels her patience thinning as she wonders why he appears so irritated. Noticing that he still hasn't gotten his school uniform, she inquires if he has adjusted to the environment. Madaka, touching his forehead, appears tense, and Mona, sensing his nervousness, suggests giving him another tour of the school. With a cheerful smile, she reminds him to talk to her if anything is troubling him. Meanwhile, all the other boys around them burn with jealousy. Madaka nervously tries to say something, prompting Mona to ask what it is. To everyone's shock, he simply tells her to leave him alone. Mona is utterly stunned, unable to believe that he turned her down so directly. Her pride is wounded, and she wonders what could possibly be wrong with him. Why isn't he interested? Isn't she, the most beautiful girl in the room, sitting right next to him? Frustrated and confused, she glances at his phone and notices him liking pictures of cats. A sudden idea sparks in her mind. Mona, in her usual playful manner, asks if he likes cats, then mimics one by meowing cutely and winking at him. Her charm works wonders on the other boys, who swoon over her antics. She gazes eagerly at Madaka, hoping for a reaction. To her delight, he finally looks surprised, and she wonders if his heart has started racing. However, he quickly adjusts his expression and coldly tells her to meow off. Madaka lets out a sigh, and Mona becomes visibly shaken. She cannot believe what she just heard, and neither can the surrounding boys. Stunned, Mona questions why he's being so cold, especially when she had seen that surprised face just moments ago. Madaka, hiding his mouth, addresses her again. Mona, regaining some composure, excitedly asks what he wants to say. He responds by asking her to keep her distance from him. Her world shatters. Mona is utterly speechless. Throughout her life, from childhood to the present, she had always been surrounded by love and admiration. Now, rejected in such a blunt manner, she runs away in frustration. Even as she flees, one of the girls comments on how cute she looks. Mona, still fuming, questions why Madaka isn't flustered by her. Determined to turn things around, she plans to take drastic measures. Later, she climbs a ladder to put up posters and deliberately positions herself to show off her legs, confident that Madaka won't be able to look away. However, he merely glances at her and keeps walking. Stunned once again, she briefly considers an even bolder move, which is flashing him. Another boy asks if she's all right, to which she replies that she fell. Adjusting her skirt, she asks if he saw anything. Madaka glances at her briefly, then walks away, leaving Mona flustered. The other boys assure her they didn't see anything either. Sweat trickles down her face as she realizes she's running out of options. No matter what she tries, she cannot get a reaction from him. Desperate, she resolves to use her ultimate move. Meanwhile, on the other side of the school, Madaka blushes unexpectedly. He muses about how unfamiliar people in Tokyo are with his way of thinking. A boy beside him notices his flushed face and jokingly asks if he's thinking about something inappropriate. Madaka's expression immediately hardens, and he firmly denies it. The boy with glasses then points out that Madaka gave Mona the cold shoulder again today, even though she has been going out of her way to be nice to him. The boy interjects, urging calm, and offers to explain. To everyone's surprise, the boy with glasses is shocked that Madaka is from a temple. Madaka confirms this and explains that temple rules forbid associating with girls. When asked if he has ever had a girlfriend, Madaka admits that he hasn't even been friends with a girl before. He elaborates that his home is primarily populated by older people, so he has no idea how to interact with girls. Thinking about girls he has only seen on TV makes him nervous, and he blushes at the mere thought. At this rate, Madaka feels he might actually fall for Mona. He reflects on all the things she has done to capture his attention and becomes uncharacteristically excited. Desperate to suppress these thoughts, he reminds himself of his commitment to stay pure for priesthood. However, the image of having a girlfriend like her sneaks into his mind again, making him even more flustered. Yelling to calm himself, he begins chanting, much to the confusion of the two boys nearby. Madaka is a monk in training, and the only reason he chose to attend a coeducational school was to confront and rid himself of worldly desires, striving to lead a disciplined life without straying from his path. Meanwhile, Mona, still recovering from her bruised ego, asks the teacher if she can go to the infirmary. The teacher instructs her to take someone with her, and she seizes the opportunity. Stumbling dramatically, she places a hand on Madaka's shoulder and declares to the teacher that Kuroiwa will accompany her. Madaka is stunned. unable to process what's happening as she drags him along. At the infirmary, Mona wastes no time. She corners Medaka, pressing him against the wall. His face turns a deep shade of red as he stammers, asking if she wasn't supposed to be feeling unwell. In a sultry tone, she informs him that no one comes here during this time, fully intending to use the situation to her advantage. Mona smugly thinks about how no one can resist her charms when they're alone. She urges him to be honest, asking him what he truly feels about her. She continues, her voice softer now, confessing that his cold demeanor makes her think he hates her. Medaka hurriedly denies it, his face becoming even redder. Mona grins triumphantly at his flustered state, thinking she's finally won. But just as she feels victory is within reach, Medaka's expression abruptly changes. He starts chanting. Taken aback, Mona refuses to give up. She locks her hands with his, forcing him to stop. She demands they have a proper conversation, but as she shifts her stance, she accidentally steps on a piece of cloth. Both of them lose their balance and tumble onto the bed. For the first time, Mona feels truly embarrassed, realizing she might have gone too far. Flustered, she lies there in silence, but Medaka's stern, angry glare snaps her out of it. She is stunned. It has no effect on him. Frustrated and annoyed, she grows desperate. How could someone so handsome remain unmoved by someone as attractive as her? Refusing to back down, she unbuttons her shirt slightly, revealing her chest. This finally elicits a strong reaction from Medaka, whose face burns with embarrassment. Mona, too, blushes deeply, realizing this is her final trick. With tears welling up, she begs him to fall for her. Yet Medaka stays resolute, his face still burning, refusing to show weakness. Both of them tremble, the tension unbearable. Tears stream down Mona's face as she throws a tantrum, demanding to know why he's being so cruel. Suddenly, she slips off the bed. Medaka instinctively moves to catch her, pulling her back up. When Mona comes to her senses, she finds herself face to face with him. Concern etched on his face, Medaka asks if she's all right. Her heart skips a beat. But when she realizes the awkward position they're in, she becomes flustered and quickly reassures him she's fine. Medaka also notices their compromising position and immediately falls back, scrambling to explain himself. He stumbles over his words before abruptly standing up, declaring that he can't take it anymore. Turning toward the door, he announces that he's leaving. But before stepping out, he pauses. Looking back, he advises her earnestly, "The thing you just did, save it for a guy you really like." Mona is left speechless, her cheeks blazing red. As he leaves, she yells after him, demanding to know why her heart is racing. Medaka stops briefly, surprised by her voice, but continues walking. He mutters to himself, struggling to regain composure. That was intense, and he needs to get his act together, but she's too cute. The next day, the usual commotion surrounds Mona as the boys flock to greet her. Medaka notices her from across the room, and for the first time, she flusters under his gaze. Awkwardly, she greets him as she sits down. Mona remarks that he's finally wearing his uniform. Medaka replies dryly, as always, but notices that she is unusually quiet today. Confused, he looks at her questioningly. Feeling his gaze, she asks why he's looking at her and avoiding his eyes entirely. Medaka silently tries to cleanse his thoughts, while Mona fights to hide her embarrassment. The tables have turned. It feels like she is the one falling for him now. Frustrated, Mona curses under her breath and bangs her head against the desk. Glancing at Medaka, who is staring at her in confusion, she clenches her fists. Determined, she vows to make him truly notice her, even if it's the last thing she does. The next day, Mona greets everyone with her usual charm, effortlessly capturing their attention with her stunning looks. She takes great pride in her beauty and the adoration it brings. Medaka appears, greeting her with a scowl before walking past her. She pouts, frustrated that he is the only one who makes such a face when he sees her. It's not fair, she thinks, watching him leave. Unbeknownst to her, Medaka blushes at her cuteness as he passes by, immediately starting to chant to steady his thoughts. Annoyed that he won't even glance at her, Mona decides to take matters into her own hands. During gym class, she performs an impressive split, leaving all the boys in awe. The coach reminds everyone to stretch properly. Seizing the opportunity, Mona calls out to Medaka, inviting him to join her and see how flexible she is. She encourages him to stretch with her. The boy with glasses jealously informs Medaka that Mona is calling him. Flustered, Medaka retorts that she's barely wearing anything. Mona, overhearing his hesitation, wonders if he's pretending not to hear her or genuinely ignoring her. Before she can press further, the coach calls all the girls over. Mona fumes internally, questioning what more she needs to do to get Medaka's attention. Every glance she throws his way seems to have no effect. Suddenly, she remembers what he said in the infirmary about saving her charms for someone she truly likes. She clenches her fists in frustration, her pride stung. It doesn't matter, she resolves. She will make him fall for her, and then she will back off as the class ends. Mona breathes heavily, catching Medaka's attention. She deliberately strikes a seductive pose while wiping sweat from her body, exposing glimpses of her skin usually hidden from view. The other boys are mesmerized, stunned by her display. Confidently, Mona thinks that if her chest and curves didn't work, perhaps this would. Medaka glances at her briefly, but quickly turns away. She stands there, dumbfounded, as Medaka walks out without a second glance. The other boy is equally shocked by his indifference. Gloom settles over her as she questions why he reacted that way. Outside, Medaka pours cold water over his head, trying to cool off. Frustration bubbles within him as he wonders why she is so reckless. Catching himself too late, he scolds himself, reminding himself of his vow to stay pure. He needs to forget this ever happened, he tells himself firmly. Mona, meanwhile, feels dejected and gloomy. She berates herself internally, admitting that Medaka rejecting her so harshly has shaken her confidence. Despite her frustration, she resolves to look him in the eye and face him again. As Medaka dries his face with a towel, he notices her nearby. Their eyes meet briefly before he quickly hides his face again. Mona is left speechless, anger bubbling up inside her as she wonders why he won't even look at her. Deciding to give up for the day, she sighs in defeat. Medaka, still hiding his face, finally lowers the towel. He spots Mona drinking water, and his face instantly flushes red. Mona notices his gaze, and before he can react, he turns away hurriedly. She stares at him, stunned, wondering if he's secretly into these kinds of things. In her confusion, her hand slips, and the water spills, drenching her clothes. Mona freezes, realizing that her outfit has become see-through. Medaka, noticing this, lets out a panicked scream. Mona also screams, bending down in an attempt to cover herself. Mortified, she berates herself. This wasn't the plan. She can't just give him a free sample. Medaka, meanwhile, blushes furiously, his thoughts spiraling from what he just saw. Mona, equally embarrassed, curses the timing of the incident. Of all people, why did this have to happen in front of him? She hears a rustle and glances up, confused, as Medaka takes off his shirt. Before she can react, he drapes it over her shoulders, quickly covering her exposed clothing. His voice is nervous but firm as he tells her she can wear it. Mona, momentarily stunned, stares at his bare torso, her face turning crimson. Medaka, flustered and eager to escape, informs her that he's heading back. Chanting quietly in his mind, he walks away without looking back. Mona calls after him, thanking him softly. He turns his head slightly and brushes it off, telling her it's not a big deal. As she watches him leave, she feels an unfamiliar sensation. He had beaten her at her own game. On the other side of the gym, Medaka reunites with the boys. They ask what happened to his shirt. Coughing awkwardly, Medaka evades the question. The guy with glasses comments that she always looks cute. She introduces herself once again as Mona and reveals that people say she is beautiful without even trying. She adds that nobody can resist her beauty. She asks if this pose is okay, and he informs her that it is a little extra. She questions why Medaka is scowling again and asks him to tell her what he really thinks. With a smile, she reveals that, as his model, she will do anything he wants and listen to his requests. With a seductive tone, she whispers in his ear not to ask her to go nude. She chuckles, saying she is just kidding. He responds coldly, telling her to have some class. She becomes embarrassed, wondering why he didn't get the joke. She is determined that she will change him today. Their assignment is to team up and draw each other, and they end up paired together. She thinks it's an easy win for her. She knows she is cute, and if he is going to look at her all the time, he will absolutely fall for her. She wonders what pose she should do. He remembers the other day when Medaka couldn't keep himself together because of her hotness. She notices his body shaking as he starts chanting again. She decides on a pose and strikes one similar to the one she did at the water fountain. She asks him what he thinks about her pose, and all the guys in the room compliment her. She chuckles and informs Medaka that she will be his muse. She notices him blushing as he looks at her, and she smiles, thinking her plan is working. Medaka, however, quickly calms himself and tells her to do whatever she wants. She is taken aback that her efforts have no effect on him. Annoyed, she comments that she is standing there, looking pretty, while he is just drawing her without any reaction. Medaka continues to stare at her intently, and she starts feeling uncomfortable. She thinks to herself that he is staring a little too much and begins to blush. Trying to regain control of the situation, she asks him which part of her he is drawing. He replies calmly, "Your neck?" He then comments that her neck is delicate. Her cheeks turn red, and she starts blushing even more, feeling increasingly uncomfortable as he continues to draw. She gulps nervously, realizing that he is still looking at her neck. Sweat trickles down her body as his unwavering stare makes her feel feverish. It feels as though his gaze is burning straight through her, and she can't take it anymore. She snaps and tells him that it's enough. He looks at her in confusion, but before he can respond, she runs out of the classroom. In the girls' bathroom, she stands in front of the mirror, trying to compose herself. No matter how much she smiles, she thinks to herself, Medaka never reacts. No matter what she does, he always looks away from her, and it's not fair. Tears well up in her eyes as she questions why he was looking at her like that now, but can't look at her like that all the time. Back in the classroom, the guys surround Medaka and ask him what he did to Mona. A girl speaks up, saying she knew something was wrong. Looking at Mona's pictures, the girl contemplates that ever since Medaka transferred, Mona has changed.